بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم، والصلاة والسلام على سيد المرسلين وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. أرحب بكم أجمل ترحيب في المحاضرة 17 لمادة إدارة التفاوض وحل النزاعات. عنوان المحاضرة: مهارات متقدمة ومتنوعة في التفاوض. خلال الفصول الماضية استعرضنا مجموعة من المهارات ومجموعة من المواصفات للمفاوض الناجح. الآن عندنا مهارات متقدمة وعندنا مهارات مختلفة بدنا نحكي عنها بشيء من التفصيل. أول مهارة عندنا مهارات جمع وتحليل واستخدام المعلومات. بدءا لابد من الإشارة إلى أهمية ومكانة المعلومات في الحياة المعاصرة بشكل عام. أجمل الأوصاف للمعلومات. بالمعلومات يقاس حضارة أي أمة من الأمم هو بما تمتلكه من المعلومات. المعلومات هي السلطة. أيضا تبنى القرارات على المعلومات، بل وتعتمد دقة القرارات في 90% منها، وتعتمد دقة القرارات في 90% منها على المعلومات. بدون المعلومات يصبح الرأي أو الحكم على الأشياء قائما على الاجتهاد والتصور الشخصي وعلى التخمين. تستند المفاوضات بجوانبها المتعددة وبصورة قوية على المعلومات، ذلك أن طبيعة هذه العملية تعتمد وبدرجة كبيرة على مقدار المعلومات المتاحة إلى المتفاوضين. لا مفاوضات بدون معلومات، وأن المتفاوض الذي يجلس إلى مائدة المفاوضات دون أن يتزود بالمعلومات المطلوبة كالمحارب الذي يدخل ساحة القتال وهو أعزل لا يوجد معه أي سلاح. إن تمييز جودة الكثير من الإجراءات التي يتخذها المتفاوض يعزى في الغالب إلى جودة المعلومات ذات الصلة بموضوع التفاوض. تعتبر المعلومات وتنظيمها من أولى المهام الرئيسية في التفاوض، بحيث يتم تجميع البيانات الإحصائية والمعلومات وتصنيفها بالأسلوب الذي يسهل عملية الاستفادة الكفؤة منها. غني عن القول ضرورة التأكد من دقة وأمانة مصادر المعلومات وإخضاعها إلى عملية تحديث مستمرة في ضوء المستجدات، إضافة إلى ضرورة التمييز بين المعلومات الرسمية وغير الرسمية ومن أطراف ثالثة. يستفاد من تعدد مصادر المعلومات إضافة إلى الفوائد الأخرى في جانب التأكيد أو التحقق من صحة المعلومات ودقتها. إن أسلوب طرح الأسئلة والاستفسارات خلال المفاوضات يعتبر مصدرا هاما آخر لهذه الأغراض، وعلى المتفاوض الماهر أن يدرك فائدة تحضير الأسئلة الرئيسية ويعرف ماهية المعلومات التي يريدها والطريق الأفضل في السؤال عنها والأسئلة البديلة للحصول على هذه المعلومات. الحركات والإجراءات التي يقدم عليها المتفاوضون عند الافتتاح تخلق في أحد جوانبها المناخ اللاحق للعلاقة بين الأطراف، وفي جوانبها الأخرى تقدم المعلومات الخاصة بشخصية ومواقف ونوايا كل طرف تجاه الآخر. تعتبر جلسات التفاوض سيما جلسة الافتتاح على قصر أمدها مصدرا بناء للمعلومات. ينبغي فيها على المتفاوض أن يستشف وبسرعة عالية أي إشارات يمكن رصدها لدى الطرف الآخر اعتمادا على خبرته ومهارته وأسلوبه التفاوضي لتكوين انطباعات محددة قد يكون لها تأثير كبير على المراحل اللاحقة. يعتبر الإصغاء من إحدى طرق الحصول على المعلومات المضافة خلال المفاوضات، والتي تزيد من قوة المتفاوض، والتي ينبغي أن تتقن بصورة صحيحة وإيجابية، كالنظر إلى عيني المتحدث وتشجيعه على الاستمرار بالحديث. وقد قيل أن المرء مخبأ تحت لسانه. المهارة الثانية هي مهارة الاتصال وتبادل المعلومات. أولى العديد من المهتمين بالمفاوضات اهتماما كبيرا بعملية الاتصال. تعتبر المفاوضات بحد ذاتها عملية تنطوي على تبادل الآراء والرغبات والاهتمامات، وأنه لا يمكن لهذا التبادل أن يحدث دون حدوث الاتصال بين الأفراد. يعتبر الاتصال فنا من فنون التفاوض. الاتصال هو أكثر العناصر أهمية في فنون التفاوض، ذلك أن المفاوضات تهدف إلى إقناع الطرف المقابل بوجهة نظرك والوصول إلى اتفاق. الاتصال هو مهارة تفاوضية تعتمد على الأسلوب الذي يطور فيه المتفاوض من حيث الاستخدام والتأثير، قدرته على الاتصال الفعال. أيضا هناك ضرورة بأن يطور المتفاوض مهاراته الخاصة في ملاحظته إلى اختلاف وجهات النظر في الاتصال والعقبات التي تعترضه وأثر الأشخاص في ذلك. الأفراد يختلفون بطبيعتهم ولكل أسلوب الخاص، كذلك تختلف أساليب الاتصال بدورها باختلاف الحالات التفاوضية والظروف السائدة. لغرض تحسين الاتصال بين الأطراف هناك عددا من الخطوات العملية، من بين أهمها: أولا خلق المناخ الودي، 2 عرض المعلومات بصورة مبسطة، 3 الاستفادة من وسائل الاتصال غير الشفهية، الإنصات بصورة جيدة والتركيز وتسجيل الملاحظات وطلب التوضيح والتحقق. يتأثر التفاوض بأنماط الاتصال الشفهي، ويستغل المتفاوضون أنماطا متنوعة، منها التماس وإعطاء المعلومات أو تقديم المقترحات، الاتفاق أو الاختلاف. إن أنظمة الاتصال في المفاوضات أكثر سعة من كونها مجرد مجابهة بين فرقاء على مائدة التفاوض. من بين أساسيات الاتصال التي يؤكد عليها خبراء المهارات القدرة على الإصغاء وفهم لغة الجسم أو لغة الجسد، كما أن الإصغاء من أصعب المهارات سيما للمتفاوض المبتدئ. فالإصغاء الجيد يتطلب من المستمع القيام بعدة عمليات في آن واحد: تقييم ما يقوله المتحدث، ويراجع ويتنبأ بما سيقول لاحقا، إضافة إلى إعادة ربط واستذكار هذه العمليات بكاملها. يتطلب الإصغاء من المتفاوض التركيز على ما يقول المتحدث وليس على ما يرغب هو قوله لاحقا. هنا تبرز أهمية تدريب المتفاوض على الإصغاء وفهم وإعادة صياغة العبارات والكلمات التي يتحدث بها المقابل، وبنفس الأهمية أيضا فهم ما وراء الحديث وبين طياته والمعنى المقصود من وراء المعنى الحرفي لما يقوله. إن اعتماد أسلوب التساؤل وطرح الأسئلة خلال التفاوض له وظائف 5، هي إثارة الانتباه بالبداية، وتقديم المعلومات، الحصول عليها أيضا، استحداث التفكير لدى الطرف الآخر، استخلاص النتائج واتخاذ القرار. المهارة الثالثة وهي مهارات اليقظة والتركيز خلال التفاوض، تعني مدى استطاعة المتفاوض في أن يركز على سير المفاوضات ويلخص نقاط الاتفاق وأوجه الاختلاف، سيما في المفاوضات الطويلة. اليقظة هي انعكاس لمدى قدرة المتفاوض على الاستمرار في إمساكه بخيوط وجوهر موضوع التفاوض قيد النقاش ولفترة طويلة ومتعبة في غالب الأحيان. إن هذه المهارة كقدرة تنعكس في طريقة تفكير المتفاوض تجاه الحالة التي قد تنشأ، وفي اختياره للأساليب العملية لمعالجتها، بحيث تتم هذه العملية خلال فترة زمنية قصيرة نسبيا على مائدة التفاوض. إن اليقظة مهارة أساسية يكتسبها المتفاوض من خلال أمران وضبط النفس ورياضتها. وهو التمرين. فاليقظة والتركيز مهارة معرفية وإدراكية معرفية في كونها قابلة للخلق والتطوير والتدريب، وإدراكية في كونها تعتمد على مدى وعي الفرد واستجابته لعوامل توافرها واستشعارها عند الحاجة. اليقظة عند المتفاوض أداة لتحقيق حالة إيجابية خلال عملية التفاوض، تنعكس في الفعل الإرادي البديهي والفراسة وحسن التبصر في إخراج الاستجابة بالشكل الموضوعي لصيغة الحالة المطلوبة مع الطرق أو الطرف المقابل. إن العلاج الناجع لتعزيز حالة اليقظة هو التحضير والتهيؤ للمفاوضات، لأنه يشد من الحالة الإبداعية لدى المتفاوض قبل أن يبدأ فعل التوتر في المفاوضات. التيقظ تكون عالية في بداية المفاوضات، ولكن سرعان ما يبدأ مستوى هذا التركيز بالهبوط، ويستمر كذلك حتى يدرك الأفراد أنهم وصلوا أو تشارفوا على نهاية التفاوض. عندها تكون هناك أشبه بالصحوة المفاجئة في هذه الطاقة، ولكن فقط لفترة قصيرة. هاي العلاقة ما بين الوقت والتركيز، لاحظوا كيف كلما زاد الوقت زاد التركيز. تتصل اليقظة والتركيز بالحالة النفسية ومدى السيطرة على الانفعالات، فالمتفاوض الذي يسهل أمر إثارته وغضبه يصبح سهل الانقياد نحو التسوية، وهي ليست لصالحه. عندما يشعر المتفاوض بأن الطرف الآخر قد بدأ ممارسة الضغط والإغراء مثلا، عليه أن يحتاط منه من خلال استخدام واحدا من أساليب التحكم الأربعة التالية. أولا التحكم بجدول الأعمال، والتحكم بالحدود، والسوابق، والوقت المتاح. المهارة الأخرى هي مهارات الإلمام بالمعارف المتنوعة ذات الصلة بالتفاوض. ينبغي على المتفاوض إدراك أهمية وتأثير مكونات البيئة الخارجية باعتبارها جوانب أساسية مكملة لعملية التفاوض، واستحضارها بصورة دائمة على مائدة المفاوضات. من هذه المكونات الجانب السياسي، ويبرز تأثير هذا الجانب على الدوام في جميع أشكال المفاوضات. الجانب الاقتصادي، ويعتبر هذا الجانب من أهم الجوانب التي ينبغي مراعاتها عند التفاوض. الجانب القانوني، يستند المتفاوض في كل إجراء يقدم عليه إلى سند قانوني يعين على تنفيذ هذا الإجراء. الجانب الحضاري، إن لطبائع الشعوب وتاريخها وأجناسها وثقافاتها انعكاسا واضحا على سمات أفرادها، وما لهذه السمات من تأثير على مواقفهم التفاوضية. أيضا الجانب الإداري، غالبا ما يعتمد نجاح أو فشل العديد من المفاوضات على جوانب إدارية وتنظيمية لا يرى المتفاوض أهميتها باعتبارها جوانب شكلية. المهارة الأخرى وهي مهارات اعتماد الاستراتيجية المناسبة والتكتيك والمناورة. يعتبر موضوع الاستراتيجية من أهم الخصائص التي تميز طبيعة المفاوضات وتحديد أهدافها. أصبح اختيار الاستراتيجية المناسبة والتكتيكات الضرورية لتحقيق الأهداف المرغوبة مهارة أساسية تهدف إلى تسليح المتفاوض بالوسائل والأساليب التي تجعل قادرا على مقابلة الطرف الآخر. إن الاستراتيجية والتكتيك في المفاوضات التجارية هي ذاتها في العديد من جوانبها لتلك المستخدمة في المفاوضات الأخرى. إن الاستراتيجية هي خطة العمل الأساسية المختارة لإنجاز هدف ما، وإن التكتيكات هي الوسائل التي يتم بواسطتها تنفيذ هذه الخطة. إن الاستراتيجية هي الخطة الشاملة التي تتضمن تحديد الأهداف ووضع السياسات والأساليب لتحقيقها. أما الوسيلة فهي الأسلوب أو الطريقة المستخدمة لتنفيذ الاستراتيجية. إن الاستراتيجية ما هي إلا عملية التخطيط للمفاوضات وتوجيهها نحو إنجاز الأهداف. أما التكتيكات فتتصل بالحركات والمناورات المعتمدة في تنفيذ الاستراتيجية. هناك العديد من الاعتبارات المهمة التي تؤثر على اختيار الاستراتيجية الملائمة، من بينها ما يلي: مدى احتمالية تكرار الصفقة، قوتنا وقوة الطرف المقابل، أهمية الصفقة، الوقت، وأيضا الخبرة التفاوضية. المهارة الأخرى وهي مهارات اتخاذ القرار التفاوضي. إن عملية صنع القرار في المفاوضات هي ليست من أجل صناعة قرار واحد، ولكنها تشتمل على سلسلة من القرارات المتعاقبة والمترابطة إزاء جميع الإجراءات والخطوات التي يقدم المتفاوض عليها خلال المراحل المختلفة لعملية التفاوض. المفاوضات هي نظام لاتخاذ القرار يتصف بمزيج من المصالح المشتركة والمتعارضة للأطراف المعنية باتخاذ القرار. لم تلقى عملية صنع القرار في المفاوضات اهتماما مناسبا، إذ غالبا ما يكون إهمال هذه المهارة لحساب جوانب أكثر إثارة في المفاوضات. مقترحات لتطوير إدراك المتفاوض أو المتفاوض لعملية صنع القرار في المفاوضات، وذلك من خلال التركيز على 4 مجالات رئيسية، هي النماذج الاقتصادية، وتركز هذه النماذج على كيفية قيام الأفراد بعملية اتخاذ القرار في المهام التفاوضية في حالة من العقلانية التامة. تنطلق هذه النماذج من تفسير مفاده أن الإنسان يتصرف برشد وعقلانية عند تعامله مع الأفراد أو المنظمات، وذلك للنزعة الاقتصادية المثالية في أسلوب تفكيره وطبيعته. هدف مثل هذا الإنسان هو تحقيق أكبر منفعة من المعطيات البيئية. النماذج الإدارية أيضا توضح هذه النماذج كيفية قيام الأفراد بعملية اتخاذ القرار في المهام التفاوضية وفي حالة من العقلانية التي تندفع لتحقيق قدر مطلوب من الرضا. تنطوي هذه النماذج على أمر مفاده أن السلوك الرشيد للفرد أو المنظمة يتجه إلى المفاضلة بين البدائل المتاحة، وأن اختيار البديل الأفضل والأنسب من بين البدائل المتاحة يعد تعبيرا رشيدا عن قدرة الإدارة في المفاضلة واختيار البديل السليم. إن هذه النماذج ميزت بين نوعين من الرشد. النوع الأول الرشد الموضوعي، ويمثل السلوك العقلاني في اتخاذ القرار لتحقيق أعلى المنافع التي يمكن أن توفرها البدائل. النوع الثاني هو الرشد الذاتي، وهو الرشد الذي يستطيع الفرد من خلاله تحقيق المنافع الممكنة، وذلك بالمفاضلة بين البدائل المتاحة وبحكم محدوديتها. المحددات الهيكلية أو الموقفية لنتائج المفاوضات كالمعلومات المختلفة والتوقعات، أو تأثير الخصائص الأخرى المحيطة مثل صيغ تدخل أطراف ثالثة في حالة وصول المفاوضات إلى طريق مسدود. الفروقات الشخصية فيما بين المتفاوضين مثل الميل إلى التنافس، التعاون، إثارة المشاكل، الجدال، الثرثرة، حب الذات وما إلى ذلك من فروقات مألوفة. هذا الشكل يبين التكوين الوظيفي لمهارات الإقناع. لاحظوا كيف كمهارة مهمة جدا في التفاوض. مهارة الإقناع، لاحظوا عندنا قدرة إدراكية، قدرة نقدية، وقدرة إبداعية. لاحظوا القدرة الإدراكية تعني الإدراك الجيد، الفهم، الذاكرة النشطة، اليقظة العقلية، الإنصات الجيد. أما القدرة النقدية تعتمد على التحليل والتركيب والاستدلال والحكم. أما القدرة الإبداعية فتعتمد على الابتكار، المرونة، الطلاقة ودقة التعبير. والآن بترككم مع الفيديو الخاص في هذا الفصل. أتمنى أنه تستمتعوا في المشاهدة.
management strategies. There are three important parts to the success of every organization, yours included. First, the product and services. Second, the process, the way that you do what you do, the way you make your products, the way you market your services. And thirdly, the one that we're going to talk about the most today, the person, the people involved with you in your business. In this session, we'll discuss 4 important strategies managers can use to receive maximum performance from their people. Here's the first one. This may surprise you, but I tell you, this is the truth. When you speak about human behavior, this is absolutely accurate. Number 1, you and I do what we do to gain pleasure or to avoid pain. Everything that you do in your life, you do because you want to gain pleasure or you want to avoid pain. For example, I love to eat a lot of chocolate. And I travel all over the world and I buy chocolates from all over the world. And I eat them. Now, I don't eat a little piece. I eat 2 bars, 3, 4, 5, 6. It takes me about 5 or 6 nice chocolate bars to know I am eating chocolate, for example. And I want you to know, and I enjoy that so much. I get a lot of pleasure. Do you know what happens to me after I eat that chocolate? I go from this position of pleasure to this terrible position of pain. I feel guilty and bad, begin to feel like I'm blowing up, I'm getting cholesterol, and I could die at any moment. Do you feel that way? You see, what happens is, I love gaining that pleasure, although it is momentary. It is only for a few moments. Then I sacrifice this long-term pain. Think of somebody who reports to you. Think of somebody who reports to you who is a procrastinator. Why do they procrastinate? Do they procrastinate because they don't know any better? Do they procrastinate because they're lazy? Do they procrastinate because they're afraid of something? Yeah, maybe. They procrastinate because they want to avoid the pain of rejection or the pain of feeling like they fail. And so they go through life day in, day out, month in, month out, for some people even year in, year out, procrastinating. And the manager, you look at this individual and you're astonished why a mature human being would behave in this way. If only you knew that what it would take to change this human being's behavior is to induce a lot of pleasure or to induce a lot of pain. It's simple. You and I and all the people with whom you and I work do what they do to either gain pleasure or to avoid pain. And if you want somebody on your staff to change their behavior, you must ask yourself this question: how can I tell them that by getting the new behavior, they could gain a lot of pleasure? Or, conversely, if they do not change this behavior, they will receive a lot of pain. In 25 years or so, working with thousands of people all over the world, I've come to find out that your behavior and my behavior is dependent on 3 basic stages. I'd like to show you what they are. If you would look at this chart and notice the 3 colors in this triangle, you will notice there is a black block, a yellow block, and a blue block. If the blue one were to represent our behavior, what it is that you and I do every day, then the real question becomes, what leads us to this behavior? You see, if you could find out why do people on your staff behave the way they do, that is to say, what leads them to this behavior, and then if you could affect those 2 stages somehow, wouldn't you agree with me that you could change their behavior? Or better still, that they would want to change their behavior and be happy with it. That's what happens. We behave the way we do because first we think, secondly we feel, therefore we behave. Please note that what separates our thoughts and our behavior are our feelings. You and I do what we do because of the way we feel. You see, if I feel like I'm going to gain pleasure, I might behave a certain way. If I feel the pain, I might behave in a different way. And if you want somebody who works with you to change his or her behavior, in fact, if you want one of your customers to change their own behavior, ask this question. What must this person feel first so they can behave in the way that I want them to behave? What must they feel first so that they can behave in the way that I want them to behave? That becomes the very foundation upon which you can build relationships with people. What we have said so far is that you and I do everything we do to gain pleasure or to avoid pain. And we have said that your actions, your behavior, comes out of your thoughts and your feelings. And we have said that your feelings, this yellow box, predominantly affects the way that you behave. So now, here's the question I have for you. If that is true, where do you and I get our feelings? Those feelings that we have, what is their source? Where do they come from? Because if you want to change the way I feel, you must first know where I'm coming from. In physics, we say for every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. In psychology, we say for every stimulus, there is an equal and opposite response. I do something, you respond to it. I say to you, good morning, how are you? And you say, good morning to you, I'm fine, thank you. Stimulus, response. I do something to you that you don't like. How do you respond? Some people respond likewise. Other people might forgive. What are those feelings dependent on? If I were to pick up this pitcher of water, you can see it has roughly a third to one half filled with water. And if I were to take this pitcher and come to my friend here and unannounced and unexpected, some of you are beginning to enjoy this, huh? You'd like to see me do this. If I were to go over there and I were to pour the contents of this pitcher, all this water, merely on his well-groomed head, his face, his nice suit. And water comes dripping down his face, drips down from his nose, his earlobe, from his mustache and beard. I have a question for you. How do you think friend would respond? Let me ask you if I may. What do you think that he would do if I were to throw that water on his head and his clothing? What do you think he'd do?
Well, he would certainly get upset.
He would get upset.
And look for a close towel.
And look for a towel? To what? To dry himself? And then what? Would he cry then?
No, he would probably go through a thought process.
But what would he do? He dries himself and then what?
Ask why you did it.
Okay, interesting. What do you think he would do?
He might go opposite. In this context, he might laugh.
He might laugh. He might say, ha, 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 I love this. Bring me another pitcher of water. Okay, but he would laugh.
He might laugh it off and...
He might think it's amusing.
Right.
Okay?
Shake some water on you.
Don't give him any ideas. What do you think he would do?
Might get angry.
Ah, he might get angry. How would I know that he's angry?
He'd probably come off his chair.
He would come out of his chair and
Perhaps go after you.
he would hit me.
Possibly.
I'm a nice guy. Do you think he would hit me? It's possible, isn't it? It is possible. What do you think he'd do? Take a look at him. What do you think he'd do?
Probably he would get embarrassed
Oh, he would get embarrassed.
and maybe pull away.
He would get embarrassed and pull back? Isn't that interesting?
Turn red. Would turn red. Show it in his
His
face.
face would become red, be embarrassed in front of his colleagues then? Very interesting. Four of you said different things. What do you think you would do? Now let's think of the scenario. I bring the pitcher of water. I come to you, you're well groomed, look nice. I pour it on you. Now you're all wet. What do you think instinctively you would do in response to that?
Jump up
And
try to get the coat off, try to get dried off. Wonder what I would do if I was out of town to compensate for being wet.
listen to his answer. His answer has had nothing to do with me. What he has just said is he would be more concerned about what he's going to do now that his clothes are all wet and he's out of town and he has no other clothing. I want you to notice something very interesting. The four of you, and even you, really now don't know what you would do. You wouldn't wager any money, for example, on what he might do. Even you don't know. Why is that? Here's why. You do not know what he will do, and he's not sure what he would do, because at this moment we are discussing the scenario at the thinking level. This is only a scenario. This is only a possibility. How probable we don't really know. So at this moment we think of it as an idea over there. But if I were to throw the water on him unexpectedly and unannounced, immediately where would he be? Exactly. He would behave. Why? Because immediately he would have certain feelings, and those feelings would automatically cause his behavior. Now, you may be right. He might punch me and hit me because his behavior was affected by his feelings, and then you know what? He might come right back and say, "Oh, I'm sorry, Nito, I didn't mean to do that." He would then think about it. A lot of times you and I do that. We feel, we behave, and then we think about it and we say, if I had to do this thing over again, I would do it differently. Which means, now that I've thought about it, I believe I will go about this problem from a different perspective. Now, the truth of the matter is, when you were a little boy, if when you came home, let's say one day, and you had blood on your cheek, and your father said to you, "What is the matter, son? You have blood on your cheek." And if you were to say, "Well, Dad, at school there was a little kid, he threw me down on the ground, I hit the gravel, and my cheek was cut, and the blood came out." If his dad had said to him, "Let me tell you, son, the world is filled with people like that. The next time somebody does that to you, you grab them up and you hit their head against the wall so they will never again do that to you." If that is the kind of feedback and input that this man has gotten in his life, chances are his behavior would be to hit me. If, on the other hand, his father said to him, "Oh, son, life is filled with people like that. The next time somebody hits you, you simply get up, you dust your clothes off, and you go on your merry way, because you see, son, life is filled with people who will attempt to make your behavior like their behavior. Rise above the crowd. Use your brain. Act in a responsible manner." That's the kind of feedback that you've had in your life. The chances of him hitting me are not good at all. Chances are, like some of you said, he will say, "Why did you do that, Nito? I can't believe you did that to me." He might even get up and quietly leave this room. But hitting me would not be in his consciousness. We said for every action there is a reaction. For every stimulus there is a response. The real question becomes, what causes that response? What creates those feelings within us so we behave in the way that we do? 3 things cause that response. Here they are. First one is called frame of reference. Your frame of reference. The places you've been, the people you've been with, the experiences you've had, all of those come into play as you behave. So, for example, your father telling you what to do is in your frame of reference. If your frame of reference is a certain way, you tend to behave that way. Now, what that means for you and for me as managers is that sometimes we have the responsibility to change our behavior even though our frame of reference dictates otherwise. As the world about us changes, so must we grow and become better. So first, your frame of reference, your past experiences. Second, your personality traits. Your personality traits. Certain people are very aggressive. They're very temperamental. Others are laid back and quiet and calm, and that affects to a great measure the way that they would behave. And thirdly, our perception. How we perceive circumstances. For example, if he had perceived that the reason I picked up that water and poured it on him was to embarrass him in front of all of you, he might respond one way. On the other hand, if he had perceived that my only purpose, my only motive was to pick up this water and throw it on him only to illustrate a point, even though we would all agree that's not a good illustration, he would forgive me. He would say, oh, Nito, come on, get with it, learn some good things in life, but he would feel no malice towards me. Are we together on that? Our feelings then, our feelings which cause our behavior come from our frame of reference, our personality traits, and our perception of how things are and how they affect us in life. The first management strategy then is that we all do what we do to gain pleasure or to avoid pain. Once we understand that, we can get people to change their behavior by changing their feelings. We give them new ideas so that they can become better at what they do. There's a second basic strategy that all of us as managers must understand and use effectively with consistency. And that is, there is a marked difference between persuasion and information. Somehow, my friends, we have gotten the feeling in this world that all we have to do to give people, to get people to change is to give them more information. If only I can give you more information, you can become better. And the truth is, we have information coming at us from all angles, and most people don't know what to do with it. What do you do with all this raw data? Somehow, excellent managers have learned to take this body of information and build a bridge slowly and gently to their people, to persuade them, to get them to behave in a certain way. I'd like to give you 3 questions. If you answer those 3 questions every time you work with somebody, your persuasion powers will excel. The first one is this: what do I want them to do? What do I want this person to do? If I had my way, what is it that they would do? The second question: how must they feel? How must they feel to do what I want them to do? The third question: what must they know so they can feel this way, so they can behave in the way I want them to behave? We're right back to think, feel, behave. The truth is, a lot of us try to communicate with others without first, in very clear terms, saying to ourselves, what is it I want this human being to do? Specifically and clearly, what do I want them to do? And then how must they feel to do that? And what must they know first so they can feel this way, so they can do that? Here's an example. You go to a doctor. Let's say you have a sore throat and you go to a doctor. And you sit in the waiting room for the doctor for a long time, although you're a very busy and important person. And finally, the nurse comes in and calls you to the doctor's office, and you go down this well-lit corridor to an examination room. And the nurse says the doctor will be here momentarily. Momentarily means you could wait another 20 minutes or 30 minutes. And tell me something, is that room ever over 20 degrees? I mean, you sort of come in with a cold and you walk out with pneumonia, don't you? And so now 20 minutes outside, 20 minutes inside, finally the doctor comes in and says, what's the matter? And you say, my throat hurts. And the doctor writes a little prescription, so you can take it to a pharmacist, chemist, a drugstore, where you can buy the medicine. And you can never read what the doctor wrote, right? You cannot read what he wrote. They just never learned how to write properly. The truth is they know exactly how to write. You know what that prescription says? That's a secret message from the doctor to the druggist. And you know what it says? I got my money, now you get your money. Now the doctor spends about 2 or 3 minutes with you, and then the doctor leaves. And as the doctor is leaving, you look at the doctor, what do you say? Thank you. Thank you for having me wait 20 minutes outside and 20 minutes inside. Thank you for taking my money. Isn't that crazy? Shouldn't the doctor be thanking us? Aren't we the customers? Why do we thank the doctor? Because there is a very powerful principle at work. And the principle is, when I went to that doctor, I was very persuaded that that doctor is going to take my pain away. And remember what I said at the top of this program? You and I will do more to avoid pain. And when the doctor takes my pain away, from my money, from my time, I'll wait whatever amount of time it takes. We must learn to communicate effectively with our people so that they can be persuaded that the ideas that we give them would work for them in their lives and would help them to achieve the things that they want to achieve in their life. The third principle is that managers today must know the difference between excuses and objections. When you ask someone to do something for you, maybe it's a project to be done, maybe you invite their ideas and participation. Many managers do not know the difference between an objection and an excuse. Only 4 things happen when you ask someone to do something. They either say yes, or they ask you a question, or they give you an excuse, or they give you an objection. If they say yes, that's wonderful. If they ask you a question, you can deal with that. If they give you an excuse, you're in trouble. Unless you know how to turn that excuse into an objection. Excuses might be things like, I want to think about it. I want to talk to somebody about it. Let me look into it. In today's world, what do these questions mean? No results come out of statements like that. What we must do is see if the person is giving us a real objection. Objection, you can do something with it. You can provide them more information. You can help them set a strategy. You can show them how they can solve that problem. You can help them manage the journey. An excuse is a waste of your time. And the fourth management strategy that we must all understand. We must know the difference between solutions and agreements. You know, as a manager, you have a lot of power. And if I were reporting to you, I would be cognizant of the fact that you are my boss. And oftentimes we bring committees together or individuals together, and we solve a problem, but the solution does not bring together teamwork. The solution is not subscribed to by everybody in the group. So you have people leaving the meeting and saying, well, we'll do it that way, but that's not really the way I think we should do it. And somehow the performance of the individual becomes lesser and not as significant, not as productive, because they don't buy into the solution. So while solutions are important in technical areas, in behavioral issues, we need to work hard to bring agreements among people so that the fingers on one hand can work together, make things really work. My friends, you and I are living in a world that is moving and changing. You and I have opportunities like we never thought possible. You and I as managers can make things happen. We can help our organizations, we can help our people, and we in the process help ourselves. We also must know that yesterday's ideas cannot be used today to solve today's problem. And today's ideas may not be sufficient to meet the challenges of tomorrow. And the smart manager is he or she who understands the basic principles that make for success in management today. Some of these strategies, as I've shared with you today, are simple to understand, useful in our lives, and can be enormously effective. To know that people do what they do, either gain pleasure or avoid pain. Understand that there is a major difference between persuasion and information, between excuses and objections, between solutions and agreements. When you know those differences, when you put them to work on a daily basis in your life, in your business, with your group, then you, my friend, you are moving onwards and upwards with excellence.
In today's session, we're going to learn how to respond, not just react to life. I was in Kansas City, Missouri. It had been one of those weeks. I'd been border to border, coast to coast, north, south, east, and west, doing those 4-hour seminars. I'll tell you, by Friday, I was bushed. Now, Friday was a little different type of session. We were recording. When you record, you move it up one more notch for audio. And the reason is you do not have the body language to communicate with. You rely entirely on the voice. So that morning it was full speed ahead, wide open. Well, when I finished at 1 o'clock, I really was tired. We had a flight back to Dallas at 3 o'clock. They had said to us, you need to get there at least 1 hour early because the piece of recording equipment we had at that time weighed 144 pounds. Well, my son-in-law, who works with me, packed it as quickly as he could. We caught a cab. We made the mad dash to the airport, got there straight up and down 2 o'clock. We're on time. We walked in the airport. There were 2 long lines of people. I got in the line, which I thought was the shortest, and prepared to wait. But almost immediately I noticed there was a lady walking around behind the counter. I knew she was a ticket agent. At one end of the counter, I saw a sign that said position closed. Now, I knew on the other side of position closed was position open, so I got ready. I wanted to be the first in that new line. Well, sure enough, about 3 minutes later, the lady walks down to that spot. She flips the sign over. She grinned at the long 2 lines of people and very pleasantly said, those of you who have a seat on the 3 o'clock flight to Dallas, come over here. Well, quick as a flash, I was over there. I mean, I got to the new line before anybody else had even left the old line. I had snookered the crowd. The lady smiled at me in a very friendly manner and said, the 3 o'clock flight to Dallas has been canceled. I said, fantastic. She looked at me and she said, what did you say? I said, fantastic. She said, look, I just told you your flight has been canceled. Why on earth would you say fantastic? I said, ma'am, it's very simple. There are only 3 reasons on the face of this earth why anybody would ever cancel a flight to Dallas, Texas. I said, number 1, something must be wrong with that airplane. Or number 2, something must be wrong with that person who's going to fly that airplane. Or number 3, something must be wrong with the weather. That person person's going to fly that airplane in. Now I said, ma'am, if either one of those three situations exist, I don't want to be up there. I want to be right down here. Fantastic. Have you ever noticed how some people just can't wait to give you the bad news? Oh, Sally, I hate to tell you this. It just kills me to tell you this. They can't wait to get the bad news out. She put her hands on her hips. She said, yeah, but the next flight doesn't leave until 6:05. I said, fantastic. Well, by now, there's two long lines of people over here looking over at me as if to say, who is that crazy guy that says everything is fantastic? Well, the lady looked at me and she said, now look, I just told you that you've got a 4-hour wait in this airport, and you say fantastic. Now, why on earth would you say a thing like that? I said, ma'am, it's very simple. I'm 53 years old. Never before, not even once in my entire lifetime, have I ever had a chance to spend 4 hours in the airport in Kansas City, Missouri. Why, do you realize at this precise moment there are literally millions of people on the face of this earth who not only are cold, but who also are hungry? And here I am in one of the nicest buildings in this entire area, easily the best rent-free office I've ever had in my life, and it's warm inside, though it is cold outside, and down the hallway you have got a nice little coffee shop. I'm going to go down there, get myself a cup of coffee, and then I've got some critically important work I need to get done, and here I am in a rent-free facility to do it. I said, it's absolutely fantastic. Now, as you view this, as you participate in this session, you might well be thinking to yourself, well, now, I have heard about positive thinking, but Ziegler, that's ridiculous. Are you kidding me, man? Did you really say those things? Scout's honor. Not only did I say them, but I have a witness to the fact that I said them. Okay, I'll take your word for it. You said it. But now, tell me the truth, Ziegler. Did you really feel that way? Come on, man. Did you really feel that way? Why, of course not. I was tired. I'd been gone all week. I wanted to be home. But the truth is, there was nothing on this earth I could do about getting on home. So I had to make a choice, ladies and gentlemen. Do I respond to life, or do I react to life? Now, you got to understand, respond is positive. For example, you go to the doctor gives you a prescription and says, see me tomorrow. Well, when you walk in the next day, the doctor begins to shake the head and say, uh-oh, we're going to have to change the prescription because your body is reacting to the medicine. Well, you get a little upset about that, unhappy because you fear it might be some trouble. But if the doctor smiles and says, oh boy, it is working, your body is responding to treatment, you get all excited. Do you respond to life, or do you react to life? I chose to respond for the simple reason there are some things that you absolutely are not going to change. If you were born white, you're going to stay white. If you were born black, you're going to stay black. You're not going to change when you were born, where you were born, how you were born, or to whom you were born. As a matter of fact, you will not change one whisper about yesterday. But tomorrow, that's an entirely different game. And whether you respond to life or whether you react to life is going to play a major role in where you go in life. It is not what happens to you. It is what you make of what happens to you that will make a difference. Now, I could have reacted very sarcastically when the lady told me my flight had been canceled. I could have said, that's great. That's just great. I've had this reservation over 3 months. I have had my ticket over a month. I've even got my seat assignment. All I need is a boarding pass. I come up here, I've done everything you told me to do. You said get here an hour early, I did. When I was riding up there, I saw a dozen of you on airplanes sitting right out there on the runway, not doing a cotton-picking thing. Now, why can't you crank one of those dudes up and take me on down to Dallas? I could have done that. And the next flight still leaves at 6:05. Ladies and gentlemen, I got to confess to you, I did not know the lady's name who told me my flight had been canceled. To be candid, I do not know the name of a single person who works with that big old airline, and it is a big one. But this I do know. I know that because it is their airline, they can cancel my flight if they want to. But they cannot cancel my day. God himself gave it to me with written instructions. I'm supposed to be happy and enjoy that day. You know how folks are. You let them cancel one day, and the first thing you know, they'll want to cancel another one, and the first thing you know, a week's gone, and then the first thing you know, a month, and maybe a whole year. I've seen some people have their entire lifetime canceled because of some tragedy or event in their life. Do we respond or do we react? I could have jumped up and down and hooted and shouted and screamed and hollered. I could have made an absolute idiot out of myself. I could have been totally obnoxious, demanding my rights. I'll sue you, that's what I'll do. I'll have you in court. I could have done that. And the next flight still leaves at 6:05. The question is, do you respond to life or do you react to life? Let me ask you, have you ever been driving down the freeway on your way to work? You're neither positive nor negative. You're just riding along, and all of a sudden some idiot pulls right in front of you. And you have to slam on your brakes, and you hit your horn all at the same time, and you proceed to give him a piece of your mind. Why don't you watch where you're going, you dummy? I could have been killed, and so could you. If I ever see you out here on this freeway again, it's going to be me and you. I got your tag number, and don't you think I won't be looking for you either. You get on down to the office, and what do? You tell the first person you saw about these crazy people driving around you, and you tell the second person and the third person about these people. They're wild, must have been drunk, must have been on drugs, must have been something bad wrong. Oh, I mean, you're really unloading. And in the meantime, the man who committed the dastardly deed rides merrily along, unaware of the fact that you even exist. And yet he is in complete control of your relationships with those under you, around you, and over you. He's in complete control of your productivity, which means he literally is in control of your future, and he doesn't even know you live. It is the ultimate put down. Do you respond or do you react? I well remember one day I'd been over to the bank, and as I was leaving the bank and pulling out into traffic, I did it half right. I looked to the right. Well, as I pulled into the flow of traffic, all of a sudden I heard the screeching of brakes and the screaming of a horn, and I hit my brakes very quickly and looked up just in time to see a dude come pulling by in a big old limousine. I'll tell you, the look that guy gave me, if looks would kill, there would have been a funeral in my hometown. If looks would melt steel, I'd have been in the market for a new automobile. I've never seen such a high concentration of ugly in one spot in my entire lifetime. And so as I went tooling by, I threw up my hand, I said, "Hi!" The guy did a double take looking back at me, and he said, "Hi!" Probably wondering who on earth that was. Boy, must have been a friend of mine. I almost blew it there. Now, folks, I'm absolutely convinced that is much smarter than having me shake my fist at him and say, "Why don't you watch where you're going, dummy? I could have been killed too. You were going too fast, and you know you were going too fast. You come on back. I'll talk to you." And have that guy back up, get out of his car, come over and pull me out of mine and whoop up on me? Ain't no way. Now, we laugh about that. I think it's funny. But let me emphasize a point. Every day, all over this world, there are a number of people who are killed who are theoretically mature adults because of some minor, insignificant thing. They get all bent out of shape about it, and they go to war and fight about it. Do you respond or do you react? I want to share with you some thoughts and some ideas. You know, occasionally we meet obnoxious people, don't we? I mean, we can be nice and describe them in other terms, but there really are obnoxious people. But the question we need to ask ourselves is, will we let that person dictate to us the kind of individual we are? Do we surrender control to them, or do we maintain control ourselves? Remember, it's the ultimate put down when they take control of you, and it damages your career. So how do we respond instead of reacting? Fred Smith, a close friend of mine, probably the brightest human being I've ever known. He's retired, had an enormously successful business career. He's a consultant now, serves on some major boards around our country. Fred Smith says this: when somebody is rude or mean or obnoxious to us, in most cases it is not because they want to hurt us. In most cases, it is because they are hurting. And if we can put it in that perspective, shifting it from us to them, instead of letting it become our problem, when we understand that here's a human being who is hurting, not that it will relieve all of our pain, but it will enable us to deal with that pain and handle that situation in such a better way. It would be remarkably better. Then the second thing we need to do to respond, we need to ask ourselves, what difference does it really make? Suppose the cab driver was rude to you when he or she brought you over to this particular filming. In the overall scheme of life, what difference does that make? Suppose the waffle did arrive cold and you had looked forward to a hot one. What difference does that make? Suppose one of your clients has a bad day and is rude to you. In the overall picture, what difference does that really make? Now, the next step is going to be pretty heavy, but it says something that if we'll all hear, it will make a difference in our lives. One Christmas, several years ago, I got a large Christmas card, one of those that's notebook paper size, 8.5 by 11. It had about 10 words in the printed verse on one side. The other side was obviously for correspondence. A gentleman wrote me a lengthy letter, beautifully, meticulously written in very, very small handwriting, extraordinarily legible. I could read every bit of it. In this letter, he said to me, you know, Zig, all those years ago, when you and I had those altercations, both of them, I felt you were 100% at fault. But over the years, I've come to realize that it is I who was wrong. It is you who were right. The reason I'm writing you is I want to clear the deck. I want you to forgive me so that I can go ahead with my life. He signed his name. I've wished so many times since then he'd put his address. The postmark was blocked out. I could not even tell the city he was from. I've searched my memory bank. I searched my mailing list. I've searched my files. I've done everything on earth I could for quite a little while, trying to recall who this gentleman was. My memory bank is totally void. I have no idea. The name rings no bells. I have no earthly idea what he's talking about. And yet I'm so grateful that he wrote the letter, because what that did is extremely important to him. It took an enormous load off of his back. You see, he no longer carries that particular burden. And how much better off is he? Now, what I'm suggesting is going to be a very dangerous thing for you to do. The reason I say it's dangerous will become obvious as we talk. I'm going to suggest that you forgive whoever has done you wrong. I don't care what the wrong was. Whether it was stealing money from you, whether it's a relative who abused you as a child, whether you've been a victim even of incest, whether you've gone through a bitter divorce and you've had enormous problems, I'm going to say to you, forgive that person. You might well think, and I can understand this, but Sig, I'll never forget that dirty so-and-so. He or she deserves everything I can do to them. They don't deserve to be forgiven. Might be right. They might not deserve being forgiven. But you deserve the benefits which will be yours by forgiving them. Now, why do I say it's dangerous? It is dangerous because you lose one of the excuses you might have been using all of your life. The reason I cannot do more is because somebody did this to me. You now, when you forgive that individual, you are saying, I now accept responsibility for my future. That's what you're really saying. And what a dramatic difference that will make. Now, I want to emphasize that sometimes it's impossible for you to forgive, particularly if you've been a victim of a sexual abuse crime. You might well need counseling in order for that to happen, for you to forgive that other person. I plead with you, get that counseling. Most importantly, forgive yourself. You were innocent. If you were a child, there's nothing you could have done about it to prevent it. There's nothing you could have done to have stopped it from happening. If there are any feelings of guilt, they're placed there because of the perpetrator of the deed placed them there. When you clean the slate, it's amazing what you can do. The load will be so much lighter. You'll be able to move forward with much more effectiveness. The fourth thing you need to do, if you're going to respond to life instead of reacting to life, you need to learn how to train fleas. Now, just as a matter of curiosity, in our live audience here today for our filming, how many of you here today do not know how to train fleas? Don't know how? What about that? Looks like I got here just in time, okay? I want to tell you something. I say that seriously because until you know how to train fleas, I don't care where you live, you're never going to make it in life. You train fleas by placing them in a jar. Put the top on the jar and notice those fleas. They'll start jumping. They'll jump up and they'll hit that top over and over and over and over and over and over, and you will wonder if they will ever stop. But then you watch them and you'll notice that though they continue to jump, all of a sudden they're no longer hitting the top. And you can literally take the top off. And then the fleas will continue to jump, but they cannot jump out. I said, cannot jump out. And the reason they cannot is simply because they have been conditioned to jump just so high. And once they've been conditioned to jump just so high, that's all there is. There ain't no more. They can do no more. Man is exactly the same way. Many people start out in life to climb the mountain, to write the book, to break the record, to make a difference. And along the way, they bump their head a few times, they stub their toe, and they become what I call a SNIOP. Now that's spelled S-N-I-O-P. That is a person who is susceptible to the negative influence of other people. The 4-minute mile is a classic example. For years and years, athletes had tried to run a mile in less than 4 minutes. But the doctors had said, man, your heart just will not stand it. It'll come right out of your body. The coaches had put the stopwatch on them, and they said, a 4-minute mile? No way. Maybe 4:02, maybe 4:03, but a 4-minute mile, absolutely impossible. And nobody broke the barrier until a fleet trainer from Britain broke the record. His name is Roger Bannister. Roger Bannister, with a plan, with a tremendous amount of preparation, with a great deal of expectancy, and responding instead of reacting, Bannister went out and broke the barrier. He ran the race in less than 4 minutes. Less than 6 weeks later, Landy of New Zealand ran the mile in less than 4 minutes. John Walker, also of New Zealand, ran the mile in less than 4 minutes on over 120 different occasions. There have been 5 races run where 8 young young men in the same race ran the mile in less than 4 minutes. One guy, 37 years old, ran the mile in less than 4 minutes. It's happened way over 1,000 times when you put them all together. Did it happen because man got that much faster? Not at all. It happened simply because the barrier was not a physiological barrier, it was a psychological barrier. And when one person did it, then other talented, dedicated athletes started saying, if he can do it, I can do it. The same thing happens in your very company, in your very family. When one person sticks the head above the crowd and breaks a record or does something significant, other people start saying, if she can, I can. If he can, I can. Now, what is a fleet trainer? A fleet trainer is simply a person who is driven from within. They are not influenced by the snobs. A fleet trainer basically understands that you can have everything in life you want if you'll just help enough other people get what they want. A fleet trainer doesn't tell others where to get off. They show them how to get on. A fleet trainer doesn't try to see through people. A fleet trainer sees people through. As a fleet trainer, you'll be able to respond to life instead of react to life. So, what do? We're going to summarize what we've learned. Well, the first thing, remember, when you're dealing with somebody who is obnoxious, they're probably hurting. Remember that. Second thing you need to do is ask yourself the question, does it really matter? Third, we need to forgive whatever might have been done. Sometimes it's in our imagination. Now, obviously, not often. But sometimes we have perceived a hurt which was not intended, and it maybe might happen more than we realize it. Evaluate it carefully. Forgive and move forward. Fourth, then, we need to know how to train fleas. So, when do you take action? Well, I think this story, as I wind up this session, tells you when to take action. As a child, I was raised in the little town of Yazoo City, Mississippi. Now, just as a matter of curiosity, how many of you in this audience today have never been to Yazoo City, Mississippi? Never been? That's fantastic. Everybody ought to have something to look forward to, and you certainly have. Now, Yazoo City is not a very big place. As a matter of fact, we've hung a mirror up at the end of Main Street to make it look bigger. But it is exciting about once a month a train comes through town. Now, I know, a lot of people don't think that sounds like excitement. But when you understand we don't have any tracks there, that puts it in an entirely different category. Main Street runs through a car wash if you begin to get the picture of what it's all about. Now, I was born in L.A., that's Lower Alabama. And I only mention those things because I want to kind of establish where we are. Incidentally, I tease about my hometown a lot because we're confident in that little town that we've accomplished a lot. The former president of the American Medical Association is from Yazoo City, Mississippi. Former president of the American Bar Association is from Yazoo City, Mississippi. Former president of the Southern Baptist Convention. The former editor of Harper's Magazine. Several distinguished jurists are all from Yazoo City, Mississippi. Jerry Clowers is from Yazoo City, Mississippi. Have no idea what happened to the other three. But it really is an exciting place. Well, anyhow, one day I was next door for lunch, as I tried to be most every day. Now, let me emphasize the point. These folks that lived next door to us were rich. I know they were rich for two reasons. Number one, they had a cook. Number two, the cook had something to cook. And during the Depression, that's a sign of wealth. I was there for lunch, and incidentally, though I was over there often for lunch, that does not mean that we did not have plenty to eat at my house, even though there was a Depression on. I know we had plenty, because every time I passed my plate for seconds, they'd always say, no, you've had plenty. So I know that we had plenty to eat at my house. Well, on this particular day, the cook brought the biscuits out. And I looked at him, I said, Maud, what on earth happened to your biscuits? And she gave a big old tummy laugh. Now, some people call them rolls. And she gave that big old tummy laugh, and she said, well, I'll tell you about those biscuits. They squatted to rise. But she said they just got cooked in the squat. Let me ask you a question. Do you know anybody that gets cooked in the squat? Do you know anybody who's a half a mind to do something, or they're gonna do something? You see, the half-a-minders and the gonna-doers end up, generally speaking, being the never-doers. Have you ever experienced or noticed this happening? Toward the end of the school year, a project comes up. Maybe it's a civic project. Maybe it's a sales campaign. Maybe it's a political campaign or whatever. And you say, boy, I'm going to get involved in that. I really relate to that. But it's almost time for school to get out. And the kids are going to all these parties. I'll wait until the kids get out of school, then I'll have more time. The kids get out of school and they say, you know, I didn't realize it. I have to take them more places now than ever before. Wait till the kids get back in school, and then I'll really get involved. The kids get back in school and they say, well, you know, the athletic events are all in the fall of the year. Wait till the fall is over, and then I really will get busy. As soon as athletic events end, they say, well, here it is now. It's Thanksgiving or Christmas or New Year's or whatever the holidays are in my part of the world. Wait till the holidays are over. Then I'll get busy, because people just don't want to be bothered this time of year for that. After the first of the year, they say, well, now it's the weather. Have you ever seen weather like this? It's strange. It changes from one day to the next. Now, what I'm saying is that they are looking for excuses. Now, I know a lot of times that individual might say, now I know what you're thinking. You are thinking that I've lost interest. Not true, not true at all. Let me tell you, just let me tell you the way I do things. You see, when I get involved in a project, I look at all of the factors. I outline the steps. I detail the procedures. And then, man, when I get ready to go, I really am in it. Now, I know some of these other folks are ahead of me now, but this works best for me. I mean, I like to get everything just right. Well, as soon as the weather clears up, they say, well, here it is, holiday time again. It is Easter time. And you know, that's family time. And you said it yourself. You got to spend time with the family. If you don't spend time with the family, there is no purpose in all of the work. Wait, I've had some family time. They have some family time, then they say, well, at long last, we've got some decent weather. I haven't been skiing, or I haven't been golfing, or I haven't been fishing. I haven't had any fun at all. And you know, a feller's got to have some time off. You can't work all the time. Now, as soon as I do that, then, man, I'll get busy. They do a little of that, and then they say, well, it's almost time for the kids to get back out of school. That's where we came in. Let me tell you something, folks. When you wait for Aunt Matilda to move out, or John to get on the day shift, when you wait for the new politician to be elected, or the new advertising campaign to get started, when you wait for the rate of interest to come down, or inflation to slow, when you wait for the new model to come out, or anything else to change out there, before you make your commitment and take your action in here, nothing is going to happen. You'll end up getting cooked in the squad. Do it now is the message, because if it is to be, it is up to me. Buy these ideas and concepts. Take these steps. Follow these procedures, because if you do, I'll see you. And yes, I really do mean you at the top.
إلى هنا بتكون هذه المحاضرة انتهت. شكرا لحسن استماعكم، وبرحب بتواصلكم واستفساراتكم عبر هذا البريد الإلكتروني. والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.